I'm back here with this guitar. I'm looking at all the hardware that came off it. It's not the best made stuff. It looks like it's been fairly quickly and cheaply chromed. Although having said this, this is, it's old stuff, so how long does chrome really last, This looks like it's got a layer of rust, dirt, nicotine, who knows. And then the bottom of a lot of these pieces is rough. It looks like it's just been drilled out, it hasn't been filed or sanded, and then they've just dropped it in the tank to chrome it. Same here. So they're not that well made, but I think we know that. These are quite badly pitted, and I've cleaned them up as much as I can. I'm not getting an incredible shine. There's too much pitting and crazing on the chrome, but they certainly look better. The neck plate here, it's got scratches on it, but didn't come out too badly. I filed off the bottom where the machining wasn't very good. This is another piece that's well crazed, very little shine on that now. I suspect this is brass that's been chromed, and you start to see the brass coming through where it sort of corrodes. Same with this. This has had a history of being adjusted and tightened with various spanners and things, and the thread, I thought it was stripped, but it still holds the nut okay. Sort of. Well, we'll have to have a look at that. I might have to rethread that bolt. Again, not much chrome left on that. Still has the original fibre washers and a plastic washer, which I've tried to clean. So that's all original. Right now I'm working on the tremolo spring, and I've put the cloth through it. And I'm going to just pour a little of this cleaner on it. Sort of work that backwards and forwards. So I'm cleaning the inside of the spring, the bit that's hard to get to. And then I'll do the outside. I've bagged all these in the same bag, so that this is everything to do with the tremolo. Is in one bag with the back plate. I've done the same with the bridge and the tuning pegs, so everything I need for that particular job is in one place. Whoops. Well, you get the general idea. It's about rubbing this cleaner on here. Certainly coming back to life. I'll do the bottoms as well. Alright, I'm just going to take a few minutes to explain how this tremolo works, for those of you that may not have seen one of these types before. The tension on the tremolo is created by the strings, so the strings want to pull this down. There's a spring in there which provides the resistance. So when you're tuning this up, it's about getting the balance right between the string tension and the spring tension. Which is probably not that easy, because this spring doesn't even sit flush against the underside here, although probably under tension it will flatten itself out. And that's further complicated by this bolt, which seems to want to get in the way. So you've got a few mechanical issues there. In terms of the tension, that is achieved by tightening this bolt, which provides pressure against this washer, some sort of fibre washer. And then on the back side of the tremolo arm there's a nylon type washer, a wider one. So that prevents the bar from rubbing on the tremolo part, the block if you will. This is threaded into the tremolo. It is actually threaded inside there, so you can adjust the tension and get it just the way you want. So I'd probably have it like that, so it would support its weight, but I could push it out the way if I wanted to, and then bring it back if I needed it, something along those lines. And then when you've got that right, then you thread this nut on the bottom, which sort of tightens up the whole arrangement, although I would have thought it would have been better with a lock nut there, a lock washer, excuse me. So I'm going to find a lock washer and put that on first to try to keep this all together. And then it's down to how long these things last, I suppose. If they wear out, then you need to replace them with something else. Okay, well there it is fully assembled. I put a small lock washer underneath the nut, so that will hold that in the right place. The spring, I don't know how well you can see this, but the spring doesn't in fact sit flat against the bottom of here. Even when unless it's under a great deal of tension, then it sort of squeezes over a little bit. But for the most part, the back of the spring is what's contacting the body here. And when I look underneath here, I can see where it's rubbed here. So that's always been the case. There's a sort of rust mark where the chrome's worn off. So there's not really a flat mating surface at all, but I think if you rotate the spring to there, it's at its lowest point at the back, and that tends to help. And when you push it forward, it sort of seems to line up fairly well. I don't know how that's going to affect the sound of the guitar. You can see why so many of these springs are missing, because there's nothing to hold that in except for the tension of the strings. So if at any time you start breaking strings on the guitar, and you often find these guitars with strings broken where they were never replaced, and the spring is missing, which of course would happen because as the spring tension lessens, this can fall out very easily. So anyway, that is the tremolo part of the guitar. That's about as good as I can get it. I'll give it another polish. I'm going to put it aside ready for fitting. Hi, I just want to say something about this string tree that may be of interest. When you pass this through the headstock, the nuts won't go up all the way. And after I cleaned it, I tried it, and I thought, well, why doesn't this do up all the way? This part here that contacts the headstock, the top of the headstock, is threaded, so you can wind it down on either side, and this will shorten this thread so you can tighten it on the back. So that may be worth knowing, because these are actually sort of rusted in place, and I didn't realise that they could actually come loose. So if you're having trouble fitting this, and you feel that the bit that sticks out the back, the bolt that sticks out the back, the threaded portion is too long, and this, which is a capped nut, so it's only got so much movement along the thread. If it's not reaching, then you have to adjust these. I think you understand what I'm saying there. So worth knowing. This piece was quite rusty. I've cleaned it as much as I can. And just a note on fitting. I assume what you'd need to do is to do this so that you can get this as low as possible on the top of the headstock. So you'd have to adjust it until you just get enough tension on these nuts here to hold it in place. But you don't want this too high, otherwise it defeats the purpose, because the strings are supposed to run underneath it and create an angle up towards the nut to keep these strings seated in the nut for tuning and for playability and so on. So anyway, that's my 10 cents on that. These are, I'm going to call them grommets. They go over the tuning pegs, and this engages in the headstock. Some sort of plastic. I suspect at one point in time they were quite flexible. They're still a little bit flexible, but I wouldn't want to push on it too hard. As with all things plastic, they do get brittle in time. I am using this old Gibson's pump polish. I've had that a number of years. There's still loads of it left. It lasts forever. You don't need much. and it seems to be cleaning them up just fine. It may well be reconditioning the plastic a little bit, I don't know. But that's worked for me. I mean, I'm sure you could soak them overnight in some sort of washing up liquid or some sort of soapy water, and that would clean them as well. But this is fine, I think. It's got rid of all the dirt, it leaves them looking nice and clean. Pouring a little bit on here, just a tad. And using it, looks like I might use sandpaper just to get these polished up. To the edges a little bit. Okay. This is the bridge here. It comes with these threads. They thread into the base, and then the nuts thread onto these. I say nuts, I mean these adjusting wheels. These look pretty good, they don't need much. Now, the base plate for the bridge has a rather nasty, rough, jagged edge here, which is all rusty. I notice it's been sticking into the paintwork on the body, and as I took this off, it sort of took up some of the paintwork with it. It's only on that side. This side is smooth. I think I'm going to try to file that down a bit, since it's rust anyway. It's not like I'll be removing any chrome, so I'm going to file that with a file. I'll probably use this one, and just try to smooth that edge a bit, round it over, so it's not quite so aggressive. Focusing mostly on the underside where it won't be seen. Still quite sharp. Oh, it's easier to lift it. It was as if they were trying to produce a guitar for new players, you know, that had something going for it that at least sounded like a electric guitar. Some fantastic styles that look so retro today, so 60s, that's better. But they look very unusual, and this is, I suppose, their appeal for collectors, is that the guitars themselves, the shapes of the bodies, the colour schemes, the unusual headstocks, everything about them, it's just not made today. A guitar can't be made that cheaply today. It seems like everybody wants a Fender or a Les Paul or something like that, but the unusual and interesting guitars that used to be made don't seem to be quite so sought after. Although I suspect there'll be a huge market for these one day, once people learn how to repair them. That looks good. It's user friendly. It's not rough. Feels nice. It won't scratch the paint when that's refitted. I'm going to disassemble this. This all screws together on a threaded. It's like just a threaded bar. It's very unusual, and that's how you make the distance between the strings and line it up with the neck just by turning this, which, when you think about it, is quite a good way of doing it if you're mass producing guitars with questionable accuracy when you slap that neck on and drill those bolts in, and then you realise it doesn't line up very well, and you can just make all the adjustments on this. So it makes sense why they used it. The radius of this bridge is, this is a 14. Yep, 14 is about right. So the radius of the bridge is 14, as that stands. And the radius of the fretboard, the one I've got here, the one that's the largest, I believe, is a 20. And it's, yeah, it's a 20, and it's flatter than a 20. So, as it stands, this and the fretboard don't line up exactly.